Hey there, Teenacity fam. Welcome back to another episode of Teenacity Talks. Here, we dive deep into conversations that truly matter for today's teens. It's always a joy to have our loyal listeners turning in. So, okay, pop quiz time. Now, how many times have you caught yourself saying this? I'm not good at this. Or I'll probably just mess up. I'm not just the RST type. Or languages? No, they're just not my thing. These thoughts, my friends, can be the sneaky byproducts of something called a fixed mindset. And today we are uncovering why we set these mental traps for ourselves and how to stop doing that. Today we're delving deep into the realm of something that's the complete opposite of a fixed mindset, the incredible growth mindset. And the best part? We've got an absolute expert to lead us on this journey. Someone who shall guide us through this maze of self-doubt into an area of self-belief. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I am thrilled to introduce the dynamic Miss Deepti Sengupta. She's like the Dumbledore of mindset magic. And today she's going to teach us a spell that can help us teens turn those I can'ts into just watch me do it. With over 18 years of experience as an educator, Miss Deepti is like a shining star when it comes to inspiring curious minds and kind hearts. But guess what? She's not just a teacher. She's also a coach who helps young people like us discover our true potential and find a path to grow in a way that really matters to us. As a mom, she knows that when kids believe they can get smarter and better at things by working hard and not giving up, they do better, not only at school, but also in life. Miss Deepti is super committed to making sure every young person she works with has the tools they need to do their best. So today, we're going to dig into all the awesome stuff she knows and learn a bunch from her. Before we embark on this growth mindset journey, Miss Deepti, how about hearing from you? Tell us your origin story and what drew you to helping others tap into their hidden, untapped potential.
Well, Adivir, actually, my journey has been quite interesting. Like you mentioned, that I've been in the field of education for 18 years, but I came upon it very late in my life. It wasn't something I had chosen, and I truly believe that education chose me rather than me choosing education.
Oh,
So
wonderful.
my background actually is in business, and that's what I had studied. I've done international business from London, and I came back and I joined the family business, and I was just not thriving there. There was nothing really wrong, but I just wasn't happy. And so I took a sabbatical, and during that time, I came upon this wonderful little school called Mirambika. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's a small free progress school based on the teachings of Sri Aurobindo and the mother. And I was just asked to go and volunteer there. And when I went there, it was something so new. It was not something that I had trained for. It was not something I really wanted to do. But it was just like, I'm doing nothing else with my time. So let me just see what happens here. And it was actually my first experience of a true growth mindset, is what we're going to talk about today. And because, the principal there at that time, Dr. Kamala Menon, who went on to be a great mentor for me, I asked her, I said, but, I have no background in education. What am I going to do? So she says, that's not a problem. You tell me what you hated the most in school. What is the subject that you liked least studying? And I answered English grammar because I just found it very useless. And I don't know why we had to spend so much time on that. So she said, let's begin there. So I was first and foremost given the task of teaching English grammar, much to my dismay, but I did take the challenge on. And slowly and steadily, I got used to the students. I got used to the whole teaching format. And as time went by, I taught there for about 5 years. And by the end of it, Adivir, I had actually written English grammar workbook for them.
Oh,
And,
wow. Wow.
so from absolutely knowing nothing and not knowing how to teach, I actually learned from the students because I let them lead the way and they actually opened the path for me. And then there was just no looking back. From there, I went on to do my B.Ed, got my degree in education. Also, I got my certificate in the coaching. So that's how I became a teacher.
Wow, the story is so inspiring, and it's always these things that you sort of think are least likely to ever happen
Yeah,
that
yeah,
end up being the best experiences. And as someone who's giving his ACT soon, I
yeah,
can completely vouch for how agonizing English
yeah,
grammar can be
yeah.
at times.
Sure,
But
I'm sure.
what a heartening journey to talk about. And you showed yourself how you had a mindset and you embraced sort of what was happening and you went with the flow and it turned out so well from you. And tying this with what we're discussing today, the power of
Yeah.
having such a mindset, it can bring comparisons to people like Michael Jordan, legend of basketball in this case. And he's a great example of someone who's actually embraced his failures, embraced shortcomings, embraced probably not being in the right space and then heading towards the right direction. I went through this famous ad he had with Nike, and in that he said that I've missed more than 9,000 shots.
I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. That is why I succeed.
And he also faced several setbacks and failures that many thought would stop his ascent to greatness. But
Yes.
instead, he worked twice as hard to become one of the greatest athletes of all time. And I think athletes in this case can be wonderful examples of people who have growth mindsets, right? So if you can break down his example for us and explain the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset.
Sure, Adivir. Actually, you've taken such a wonderful example. In fact, he's one of the people that we really talk about when we, take on our coaching journey with young adults. And if, one was to think that, what if he had given up midway?
Yeah.
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 So
absolutely.
what if he would have given up at the 299th game?
Yeah.
Or the 25th time that he was given the shot and he didn't make it. So this is where, and you're right, he is a great example for somebody who's been able to live by the growth mindset. And even when I shared my own journey, even though I think it was a growth mindset in retrospect, at that time, I didn't have the nomenclature for it. It was
Yeah.
just something that I was doing. So, in our coaching journey, we came across the work of Dr. Caroldweck, who's a professor down at Stanford and who's done intensive study around, the theory of motivation. And the growth mindset is actually a concept that was coined by her. So essentially, a growth mindset is when you believe that intelligence or ability is not fixed. You can grow it significantly, you can develop it if you were to put in effort and with repetition and over time. So there are three aspects to it. There's effort, there's repetition, and there's time. And if you even see Michael Jordan's example and what he mentions in the Nike ad, it's just something he did again and again and again until he got it right. But on the contrary, a fixed mindset is when you actually believe that no matter how hard I try, I'm not going to be able to change my intelligence, or I'm not going to be able to grow my ability in doing something that's important to me. Right? So it's really, the mindset is basically just our approach or our belief system around a few factors if we look at it. So first and foremost, how do we look at challenges? Do we look at challenges as end of a journey, or do we look at challenges as something we want to traverse over and go forward? How do we view effort? Because if I have a fixed mindset, if I believe that no matter how hard I try, I'm not going to get better, I won't end up making the effort, right?
Yeah.
But if you believe that, no, if I put in effort, I will be able to improve, you will make sure that you are, whether it's a math problem, whether it's science or it's football, you will take out that little bit of extra time to make the effort to do repeated action, repeated practice. The other thing that really differs in the two mindsets is how you perceive feedback.
Yes. Yeah.
It can be a very emotional process, and it can actually make you feel very dejected. But if you had a growth mindset, you'd actually look at meaningful negative feedback as an opportunity for growth, because you will see it as an area of how I can do better, whereas if you have a fixed mindset, you're just going to take it as a personal failure and you don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
Right. And finally, the other thing that Dr. Caroldweck has spoken about in terms of the growth mindset is how we view success of others. Right. So for somebody with a growth mindset, like we hear about Michael Jordan, or he's a figure that inspires everybody. But let's even take an example of a classmate who did better in the test than I did. Yeah. Or another person who's going to my test prep classes, got a better score in ACT than I did. So how do I view that? Do I view that as a threat, or do I actually view somebody else's success as inspiration?
Yeah.
Right?
100%. 100%.
So depending on what our approach is to all of these factors, you are known to have either a growth mindset or a fixed mindset. And the journey becomes that much more different. And having a growth mindset will lead you to higher levels of achievement. Whereas no matter how good you are at something, if you have a fixed mindset around it, it will ultimately lead you to stagnation. Right. So that's basically that's exactly what's happened. We see in the journey of so many sports figures, like you spoke of Michael Jordan, whether you even look at MS Dhoni, or, who there's so many examples to look at, and they've just been people who have not given up in the face of setback.
Right. And I completely agree. I think it's these people who, in those pivotal moments where it seems like you're down and out and it
Yeah,
seems like you're against all odds, when
yeah,
you somehow have the resilience to bounce back.
yes,
And the difference between the fixed mindset and the growth mindset is basically perceiving something as failure and then failing forward,
yes,
essentially, right?
yes,
And
absolutely.
I
That's the
think
goal.
you talked about MS Dhoni, and a lot of us have probably seen the biopic made on MS
Yes,
Dhoni. And it
yes,
shows how in his first ever match, he was out for a duck, and then
yes.
how he came back from that, he practiced, and obviously the struggle shown of MS Dhoni in that movie is completely different ball game altogether. Going from a ticket collector to a
It
World
is
Cup winning captain. And
absolutely.
I was just going through Instagram and I saw a post, and I saw
Uh-huh.
that in 2007 there were these two separate World Cups. And excuse me for delving into cricket, but I
No,
know.
no, no, that's fine. I'd love to hear
uh,
this. Yes.
But in about March, there was one competition. And after that, MS Dhoni posters were being burnt. And then a couple months later, he led India to success in a World T20. And
Yes.
then he was being hailed all across the nation. And it
Mm,
just shows that in those experiences, what you take from your failure and how you aim to improve yourself after that, in those moments, you show certain strength, and that can take you a long way. And I
absolutely.
think even your approach to teaching is what I went through Sai Chico. And of course, I've talked to Miss Vinati as well. And the coaching seems very deeply rooted in cultivating awareness within someone, right?
Absolutely.
So, can you share a pivotal moment from your personal experience of coaching where mindset changed the meaning of failure for a client of yours?
Sure, sure, sure. So before I get into my coach's example, you bring about the point of self-awareness, and it's so important to understand, because self-awareness is the first point of change. So when you want different results, or you want to change something in yourself, awareness around it is very, very important, right? Because when there is self-awareness, you can manage yourself better. You can identify your triggers. You can look at your weaknesses more realistically, all of that. And I saw this happening with one of the young girls that I was speaking with, and she was really struggling with confidence at that
Okay.
time, and specifically in the field of public speaking. And as these days, the way schools are, there's so much collaborative learning. There's
Yeah, definitely.
all of these projects that you need to make presentations for,
Right.
and every time a presentation would be coming up, I'd see her in a complete mess, right? And to a point that she'd actually make herself physically sick. This would keep happening, and we were having conversations around it, and we spoke about the growth mindset, and we were talking about failure, and what failure really meant, and what would happen if she messed up while she was making a presentation. And completely out of the blue, and in a very unrelated conversation, one day she came and she said that there are class rep elections happening in school,
Right.
and I've decided to give my name for it. And I said, "Oh, that's wonderful." And it was a very happy surprise for me, because I was like,
Yeah.
where does this confidence come from? And she said, "The reason I'm doing this is because all the candidates have to make a pitch, have to, make a speech in front of the classmates and teachers as to why they should vote for you.
Yeah.
And realistically, I know I might not become class rep, but at the end of it, I would have at least overcome this fear."
How wonderful.
And she went on to do it, and she didn't become class rep, but it was so heartening to see, and the kick this challenge gave her, because from then on I've seen such a drastic change in the way she approaches anything difficult that comes her way. Because what happened was, there was a tweak in her mindset and her perspective as to how she framed failure, or she actually went down to changing her goal. Her goal changed from perfection to progress,
Yeah.
and that was just so delightful. And you can see it, because now when I see her, how she's doing in her academics, how she is with people, the confidence that she walks and talks with, there's a sea change. And it was just this one thing, that one initial push, but it came from an awareness, and it came from breaking down the worst case scenarios that she had built up in her mind in making a presentation and maybe mumbling or messing up. It wasn't
Yeah.
the end of the world. So that's a delightful story I have to share there.
Wonderful. And I think it requires great mental strength and great willpower to overcome these obstacles, because I participate in athletics, right? And I see
Yeah.
those around me, especially some of the younger peers of mine, their legs go numb right before a race because you're having the anxiety of coming last. And it happens to me as well.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't feel my knees at the
yeah.
starting line, but then sort of just overcome that. And when you
Mm.
talked about self realization, self awareness being key, I was reminded of this motto of my previous school. It went Nayam Atma Balhine Labhya. And that translates loosely to self realization organization cannot be achieved by the weak-willed.
Uh,
So it requires immense amounts of willpower
yes,
and
yes,
to actually convert this fixed mindset to a growth mindset, right? Because it takes a
absolutely.
lot of strength for you to embrace the inhibitions, and despite having inhibitions, go through with something.
Yeah, and the
And
discomfort of change, no,
and
it's
the
not
discomfort of
easy.
change,
Yeah,
yeah, definitely.
yeah,
But it was very heartening to hear about that story. I think it's something many of us high schoolers can relate to.
yeah,
And every day we end up judging ourselves, right? We're
yeah,
like, oh, my friend's doing this, my friend got this, right? He got full marks in an exam.
yeah.
And you can tend to feel like a failure after one bad exam. I felt that way, I'm sure, because I was always a very highly performing academic student. And then I went through this one bad exam, which was probably just in the moment lack of concentration. And then it took me into this huge slump. And, it feels like we'll never make it out of it.
Hmm.
So, as teens, how can we rewire our brains to embrace these challenges positively?
So at a time like this, I think first and foremost, it's so important to remind yourself that even if there's been a failure, the failure is just in the now. It's just one bad outcome. It's one bad score. It's not a bad life. Because as human beings, I'm saying, and everybody has this tendency, and most of us have this tendency of catastrophizing, of, thinking of the worst case scenarios that, oh, now everything is going to fall apart and nothing goes right for me. There's so many narratives that we tell ourselves that we just keep spiraling down into this pit, which becomes so difficult to traverse out of.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
So, first and foremost, it's very, very important to take a realistic view of what went wrong. Yes, there will be failures, setbacks are part of life and definitely part of school life. There's nobody who aces every exam,
Right.
right? There'll be some subjects that you're good at, and there'll be some that you just, no matter how hard you try, you just don't get it right.
Right.
So it's very important to take a realistic view of what went wrong. And then, more importantly, to figure out and identify the effort and the direction needed to do better.
Right.
Right. So what I'm really talking about, you said rewiring your brain. So rewiring doesn't happen in one go. You need to go to that response again and again and again to hardwire that process. So that the old
Right.
wiring of catastrophizing, of like,
Yeah.
oh, the world has come to an end, has to change from catastrophizing to re-strategizing. And the second thing that I feel is like, and you've been talking about this as well, and it's so wonderful to know that you're talking this language of where failure is not a bad word. It's actually just, it's a given in any learning process.
Definitely.
Right. So you shared the example of Michael Jordan. Another example that we quote so many times is that of Thomas Edison. And he has this famous quote that I've just discovered 10,000 ways of not doing it.
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
figure out, how to get there. So when you know that the brain is supporting you through this whole concept of neuroplasticity, that if you can do it again and again and again, it will support you in growth and development.
Yeah.
It will move forward. But if we give into the emotion of failing at that time, because it becomes a very emotional reaction.
Yeah.
So if we can just take ourselves further enough to get over that emotion, to become a little bit more realistic, because when we're in the midst of the emotional storm, we cannot think with reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
why you must have heard nani, dadi, mom, somebody is telling you count to 10 before you react.
Yeah. I've
Yeah.
heard that a lot.
Yeah, you heard that a
I've
lot.
heard that a
Why is
lot.
that? That's actually neuroscience. It's actually telling you because at that point, your amygdala, which is the center that senses fear and goes into the fight, flight, freeze mode, is hyperactive.
Right.
Because it's perceiving a threat that if I failed or if I've got low scores in this ACT, how am I going to get into that college that I wanted to, right?
Yeah.
But when we calm down, when we are able to look at it more realistically and say, okay, I have one more try. It's not that I didn't work hard for this one, but what can I do differently?
How well spoken. Because the podcasts I've done so far, I've heard things very similar to this. Obviously, because when you talk about teenage mental health, this is
Mhm.
building up from failure and embracing failure and then eventually becoming better versions of yourself. That is
Yes,
the key,
yes.
right? And you talked about having a realistic overview.
Mm.
And that's where I'll just quote something that the speaker from my first podcast had said.
Uh-huh.
So he told me about this thing that he learned called rule number 6. And he
Mhm.
said that one of the professors in a college said to his student that rule number 6 of life is don't take life all too seriously. And the student's very tense and the student's going bonkers. And he's like, why is it rule number 6? Why is it not rule number 1? What are the rest of the 5 rules? And he's like, don't take life all too seriously. Right. And
Oh,
in
nicely
that
said.
moment,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
And in that moment, it's all about taking a step back and looking at the bigger picture as a whole rather than your biases taking over and you
Yeah.
only looking at it from one lens. It's important to get perspective in that moment. And I think that's where something like having smart goals, because you talked about having a realistic overview of the situation, can come in. Having specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound goals, and achieving these small tasks to sort of build up your confidence and get back on your feet. So I think that's something that teenagers really need to know about today. That's why I'm going to ask you to offer some real world strategies for our listeners to cultivate a growth mindset, whether it be in academic settings, whether it be in sports, arts, or even relationships.
Yep.
Some
Life
simple
is
techniques that they can implement in their daily lives. It can be small activities
different.
that can change their entire mindset and outlook.
Yeah. So real life strategies, actually, they're very simple. And I think we've already spoken about most of them. And first one definitely is to make friends with failure, right? So like you said, it could be in the field of anything. Learning begins with not knowing. The second thing that comes, I mean, it's an extension of making friends with failure. And it's something that Dr. Caroldweck has again spoken about extensively and done a lot of research around, is the power of yet. Right. So if I haven't gotten the desired ACT score, I can just say I haven't gotten the ACT score yet.
Yeah.
So it just your brain gets a very, very different message. Right. So when you just say it as a finality, there's a shutdown in the brain where, okay, it's done, nothing further. It's the end of the day. But if you put that word yet ahead of it, means there's more to be done and it can be changed. Yeah. We spoke about the importance of having a realistic view. And then there is this whole concept of, why do we get into comparisons? Why are we comparing ourselves to somebody else? Because there will always be people who will do better than us, and there will always be people who will not do as well as us. So why is somebody else's achievement a benchmark for me? Why can it not be my own progress? Can you see the amount of pressure that would take off your own shoulders? So I just need to be better than I was yesterday. Like you said, the best version of myself. Yeah, I can't be the best version of Adivir, no matter how hard I try. I have to be the best version of Deepti. So I will try again, I will try better, and I will continue to try again until I get the desired result.
I think you shared some very, very wonderful things. It was quite knowledgeable. So now that we've talked about what exactly one can do to achieve a growth mindset, those small things. And in my podcast with Miss Vinati, in fact, I talked about a framework of my own. And there are several steps to it. There are several nuances to it. But of course, these little things that we can implement in our daily life can take us a long way in terms of evolving our mindset. But I wanted to ask you, are there any misunderstandings or misconceptions you've come around about growth mindset in your years of teaching? And if you could explain these to us and how we can ensure that we're on the genuine growth part rather than something that we may have fixated on ourselves.
So one of the biggest misunderstandings that we have of the growth mindset is that I have a growth mindset at something that I'm good at. So just because I'm good at something doesn't mean I have a growth mindset around it. Sometimes when we're good at something, our fear of failing in that is that much greater. So we don't take chances. We won't take on a challenge because, everybody thinks, like, for you, for example, like, you're known as the academic kid in your group. He aces all his exams, he's super smart. So it would actually be a fixed mindset if you stayed away from taking on the next step challenge to take your ability to the next level.
Yeah.
And then what's happening over there? We spoke about this whole journey of a fixed mindset. It'll lead you to a path of stagnation because you will stop growing beyond a point. Again, going back to, say, Djokovic or Federer, if they stopped learning new techniques, how to do a backhand better or how to serve better, if they stopped learning, saying that, no, I'm really good at it, they would stagnate because there will always be talent which is better than them at the other side of the court, sometime or the other. Maybe not for a few years, but then finally there will be somebody better than them who's worked harder than them.
Right.
So that is one very big misunderstanding. Just because I'm good at something, I have a growth mindset. You can actually have the biggest fixed mindset around things that you're actually good at.
Yeah. That's very interesting to hear about, actually. I can see that now because when I had that slump in my grades, to some degree, I thought that these are exams, I'm good at these. I probably don't need to study as much. So you need to be actually humble enough in embracing the fact that there's still better. Even if you're at the top, there's still so much more you can do. You see people like Virat Kohli, you've achieved everything. You're the poster boy of the country, and you're still going to the gym at 5 a.m. and coming back after 5-6 hours of practice every day. And you don't need to do
stay
that.
on the A game, right? Otherwise you slip. So that's one misunderstanding. And the other misunderstanding, which is very common around the growth mindset, Adivir, is that a person is wholly growth mindset or wholly fixed mindset. Each one of us is a mix. So I will have a growth mindset towards certain things in my life, and I will have a fixed mindset to certain things.
Yeah.
right?
Makes
There'll
sense.
be areas that I'd like to take challenges in, and there'll be areas where I just don't want to challenge myself because I'm like, no, I don't want to, I can't,
Makes sense. Yeah.
right? So we have to be careful if we're not getting tripped by these two distinctions. So essentially, if a goal is important to me, I think the level of effort only comes if you're motivated enough to take a challenge. Because if it's
Right.
not important to you, because just because somebody else is wanting you to do something, it's very hard to sustain that level of effort and interest.
Right. Definitely. I think that makes great sense, and that'll be a great takeaway for most of our
Mm.
listeners, knowing that it's not black and white. There's still some
Yeah,
gray area to be in. And in fact,
absolutely.
the places in which you have a fixed mindset are the avenues for your growth. So that
Yes,
just shows how it's a constant process of learning.
absolutely.
And we can't really speak of learning, or we can't speak of growth without talking about the other stakeholders involved in it, apart from teenagers.
Mm.
And in Carol Dweck's book on growth mindset, I was reading about the contribution of Tiger Woods' father,
Yes.
and how his contribution to the sport helped Tiger Woods in his progress.
Mm.
And it sort of reminded me of this Netflix series called Kota Factory. And
Mm.
that series just shows the life of an aspiring IITian. And, we all know the stigma around students going to IIT and what they face. And we unfortunately know about the pressures of these
Yes.
academics and what they bring about, especially in India, right? And there are these aspirants who work hard every day, every night to crack the entrance exams. And the contribution of their families here becomes very important,
Mm.
because families, at the end of the day, you just want to support your child and you want the best for your child. Which begs the question, how can parents, how can teachers, how can coaches, how can friends
Mm.
support a teenager in fostering a growth mindset and helping them bounce back from failure? So, what's the role of those other stakeholders involved in one's life in bringing about a growth mindset, or helping cultivate an environment where one is ready to face their fears and one's ready to take charge of their own development?
It's such a key question, Aditi, and a supportive environment is actually key to building well-being and achievement, a balance of that in one's life. And this time of, this crucial time of the teenage years where it's really life-defining as to where your life will go from here. The pressures, like you said, are unimaginable. And it's at this time that parents, educators, coaches all need to be part of that process if you're lucky enough. Finding good teachers is, for me, I've always seen it as Russian roulette. I still cannot find in my time and age, I can count good teachers on the tips of my fingers, right?
Right.
But it's changing. And I think education is becoming so much more sensitized to the need of the students now. And it's very heartening to see the shift. And I think the first and foremost shift that's happening and should happen is the parents and the teachers' own mindsets need to change.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
It was interesting that Vinity and I were giving a talk to some young kids who were attending a session with their parents. It was just an introductory talk, and one of them turned around and said that I think you need to say all of this to our parents because their minds are like cement. And we were so taken aback at the very accurate statement made by
Yeah.
this 12-year-old. And it's true. And parents have the best interest at heart. Nobody questions that. And so do the teachers and coaches. But sometimes mindset, and first and foremost, again, going back to the fact that have I transformed my understanding and my approach to failure? How do I support the child in question when they're facing a setback?
Yeah.
Because a lot of times we see the pressure comes is not on the child alone, it's coming from somewhere. It could be
Yeah.
coming from peer circle, or it could be coming from parents, it could be coming from teachers. You never know. So
Yeah.
this whole normalizing and actually celebrating failure is one very desirable need in that group of people. The
Right.
other thing is I've seen, and it works wonders, and it's again something that Dr. Carol Dweck talks about, is this phrase called praise to raise.
Face to days.
Praise to raise, right? So we want to praise our children, we
Yeah.
want to praise our students because we know what a positive effect it has on somebody's well-being and ability to take on challenges.
Yeah.
But what kind of praise are we really giving them is what we need to see. So are we praising effort or are we praising ability?
Right.
Two very, very different statements,
Definitely.
sending very starkly different messages. So if I'm going to say that, oh, you're so smart, you got it right, I've put that label, I've put that big boulder of, weight on this child's shoulder that, oh, mom thinks I'm smart, so I better not do anything to shatter that belief.
Yeah.
So this child has now become so scared of getting anything wrong that they'll go to any lengths to get that perfect mark. Whereas if you can again want to praise something that they've got right, you can say something like, I can see that you tried many different strategies and you didn't give up till you got the right answer.
Yeah.
Okay, the praise is for the same thing, but over here, I'm actually acknowledging the fact that this child has persevered. This
Yeah.
child has tried different strategies, has thought about the problem, and has not given up till they got it right. So I'm actually praising the whole process it takes to succeed instead of just the outcome.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you mentioned this because it really goes into the entire attitude and aptitude debate. And in my psychology class recently, actually, we were
Hmm,
learning about this.
hmm,
And we were learning about the psychology study that was conducted with students, younger students, much
hmm,
younger,
hmm,
probably 6 or 7 years of age. And they were given a set of questions. And some students was told that, wow, you're so talented, you're so smart. While the others were told that, wow, you've worked so hard. I can see that you've put in a lot of effort.
hmm,
And it was in fact those students who were told that they worked hard and who were told that they've put in a lot of effort, who went on to get better results in the
hmm,
subsequent tests.
hmm,
And it's really testimony to the fact that the little things that parents say or the comments that teachers make, they get embedded into minds of children, especially. If it's these little things that their parents say, that their
hmm,
teachers say, that the people around them say, that really have a profound impact on how they perceive certain situations. So I think it's wonderful you talked about that.
hmm.
And it was greatly inspirational to hear about the story of your student. I think it was very heartening. And I think there's a lot that a listener can take away from this. So we'll move on from this segment now, go into something a bit more fun.
Yeah, sure.
And I hope you're ready for
Yeah.
the lightning round or the rapid fire segment. So,
Okay, I'm on the
very
hot.
quick answers. Yeah.
All right.
So
Okay.
we'll stay on the tip of our game here,
All right. Okay.
on the top
Got
one.
it. Try
So,
my best.
firstly, I think I know the answer to this, but I'll just ask you what your favorite book is.
Okay. Were you expecting it to be mindset?
Probably. I would say. I would
No,
say.
okay, that's going to be my second best, but
Oh,
my
okay.
absolute favorite is a book called Toto Chan by a Japanese author called Tetsuko Kuroyanagi. Always hard to pronounce. Please read it if you get a chance. It's about this little girl who never stopped talking, and it's her journey with her teacher. So I
Oh,
love,
interesting.
yeah.
All right. So, next question. One song that always lifts your spirits whenever you're having a bad day, you play this song and instantly you feel
Mm.
joy.
So this song was introduced to me by my daughter. It's called the Fight Song. Have you heard it? By
Yeah.
Rachel
Yeah.
Platten.
Rachel
Yeah,
Platten. Yeah.
it gets me going no matter how low I am.
Yeah, and I think that's what the song talks about, right?
Yes,
That
yes.
I'm never going to give up. I'm never going.
Yeah,
This is my
yeah.
fight song. Take
This
back
is
my
my
life.
fight song. Take back my life song.
Yeah.
Don't care
Wow.
if anybody else
Wow.
believes, but I'm going to give it my best shot.
All right. So outside of what you do, I mean, I know that you're someone who takes great and immense pleasure in what you do. I think that's very rare to find, and congratulations to you for finding your higher calling. But apart from what you do, apart from your area of expertise, what's your favorite hobby?
Okay, I'm going to take you by surprise there. My favorite hobby is actually gaming.
Oh, gaming.
Yeah, I
Oh,
love.
you're going to be popular among every listener to this podcast.
I
Wow.
just love the challenge of a video game.
How great. How great. I mean,
Yeah,
I can relate with you on that.
yeah,
100%.
yeah.
Parents, please listen to this. Miss Deepti is encouraging gaming. Please allow your children to do so.
Yeah, the right kind of games. I don't fire guns at anybody, but I like to play games that challenge my limits in my brain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. All right. So if you could swap lives with anyone for a day, who would
Mm.
it be?
Sudha Murthy.
Sudha Murthy, the author.
Yeah.
How great. Any reason?
I find her extremely inspirational. She was a teacher also, and now she's obviously the chairperson of Infosys. And her humility and her sense of mission and
Right.
how effortlessly she does it is something I haven't seen in anyone. So yeah, I find
Wonderful.
her super inspirational.
Wonderful. All right. One piece of advice that you'd give your teenage self. We know this is a very common question, but if you
Yeah.
could go back and talk to
Yeah,
your
I
teenage
really
self.
wish I knew this answer back then, Adivir.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you made me think about this because I need to tell myself even now, in good times and in bad times, that this too shall pass. It's not the end of the world.
Wow. How great. One profound quote that I heard during COVID.
Yeah.
People were saying this too shall pass, and it's
Yeah.
something that stuck with me. Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. Share one mini goal that you're currently working on to boost your positivity.
So there are actually two. One, I'm really making, I think, my good old habit of reading has taken a drastic dip with so much going on. But yes, I want to get back to my books more and get back to a little bit more of physical exercise,
Great.
which is a great challenge for me. So, wo hai mini goal for
I
sure.
think those two things, physical exercise and reading books, they're both avenues where you can step aside, step back, and just sort of recollect yourselves in
Yes,
situations.
yes, because
And
it's very hard to find that, just
a
quiet
sense of
time.
peace that you get,
Yeah,
when you're
two
just
young
working on
children.
yourself.
Yeah, and there were two young children who were constantly at you. So, yeah, so these are two things that I really need to snatch time
Yeah.
for myself and do.
So you're training your mind and your body.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah, yeah.
Wonderful. All right. And lastly, I think we talked about Michael Jordan, we talked about a couple other people, but who would be your poster boy or poster girl for growth mindset? Someone that the listeners can look up to.
Might be a little bit of an unlikely choice, but I don't know if you know of this girl called Arunima Sinha.
I could be drastically wrong here, but is she the amputee who climbed Mount
Yes,
Everest?
she was the first woman amputee to climb the Mount Everest. And I read her story while we were working on some content for Saishiko, and I came upon her. I didn't know of her before, and I still haven't gotten her story out of my head.
Yeah,
And
it's a very inspiring story.
yes, so I think, yeah, I'd like to have a poster up in my room for sure.
And her example really shows us that the sky is the limit, quite literally.
Yeah,
There's
really.
nothing you can't, if you put your mind to it, then
Yes,
there's
yes,
absolutely nothing you can't accomplish. Oh,
absolutely.
wonderful.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
All right. You've aced the rapid fire round,
Well,
clearly.
thank you very much. Thank you very much. Feels good.
Fantastic. Yeah.
Mm.
So for the last segment of this podcast, we move on to
Ah,
something we call the words of wisdom.
ah,
So, Ms. Deepti, we've got a mixed bag of listeners.
mm,
Some excel in various fields. Some are feeling a bit lost, a bit wavered right now. So
mm.
there's one mantra that you'd want every teen to internalize. It could be just a couple of words, something that they just keep at the back of their mind whenever they go through a certain situation.
Yeah, so I think this is something that is self-talk to myself every time I'm faced with something difficult, and it's held me in very good stead. And that is that an obstacle is either a stumbling block or a stepping stone. The choice is really mine.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
So,
that
yeah,
makes
it's
sense.
just my perspective, and then what we choose to do about it.
Great. I think everyone here should sort of abide by that, because a situation is only as hard as you want it to be for yourself. And you're actually determining how challenging something is for you, because at the end of the day, it's in your hands,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's in
It's the mindset that matters.
it's the mindset that matters. I think that's a very, very, very fitting end to this
Yeah.
segment as well. And
Yes.
it's a very fitting end to this podcast, Mindset That Matters. I think I should title that. I
Uh,
think that should be the episode name.
right.
Thank you so much, Miss Deepti, for being here, for gracing us with your wisdom. And it's been a wonderful, very enlightening conversation for me. I think I was very interested. I was very involved.
All right.
Before we say goodbye, could you just tell our listeners how they can connect with you, connect with Saishiko?
Sure. So we have a website, which is www.saishiko.com, or you can write into me at deepti.sengupta@saishiko.com. Yeah, I'd be happy to hear back from any one of the listeners and answer any more questions that they might have.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
Miss Deepti, for your time.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye, Adibir.
Bye bye. Thank you. So, Teenacity fam, that's a wrap for today. Remember, you've got the power to grow and absolutely throw down any challenge that comes your way. Keep it lit, keep it tenacity, and catch you next time.